A lot has changed since 1994. Movies and games were making the transition from cartridges and VHS to CDs and DVDs respectively, with the exception of the Nintendo 64, which was still opting for cartridges. The internet was becoming much more commercially affordable and accessible, although it pales in comparison to how quick it is today, because back then, you had to use a 56k dial-up just to get online. People today will never know of the struggles.
And computer companies were making preparations to deal with the potential Millennium bug, which thankfully never came to pass. With the Saturn being phased out due to poor sales and Sega putting a very expensive marketing campaign with Mr. Samurai, the company turned their attention to stepping up the next level in gaming. PlayStation were sitting comfortably with their 32-bit system, the PS1, and as mentioned, Nintendo skipped a generation by jumping up to 64-bit with the N64. Never one to be outdone, Sega opted to make the Dreamcast, the first 128-bit system in the world with access to the internet to email fellow gamers and to play them online. Components of which have become standard in most consoles today. So, if you're playing on Xbox Live or the PlayStation Network, you can thank Sega for that in the late 90s, as they got that innovation going.
Also, the Dreamcast ended that century and millennium as the world's most powerful console, something that can never be taken away from them. One might think that's a very smart strategic plan on their part, others see it as mere coincidence. Your mileage may vary on that. Now, with Sega venturing out onto a new console market, what of their mascot? What indeed?
September 9, 1999 of that year saw Sonic make his long-awaited return to the Western world and his debut onto the DC with Sonic Adventure. It was originally intended for the now departed Saturn, but Sonic Team found that the game's design and capabilities were simply too large and advanced for the Saturn to accommodate. So when it came to be that the Dreamcast was in development, Sonic Team changed their focus in adapting the game to DC specifications. Sonic Adventure is considered to be one of the best 3D Sonic games of all time, with its satisfying replay value almost akin to the 16-bit days of titles like Sonic the Hedgehog 3. You could play SA1 for hours and find new ways to challenge yourself in trial stages looking to best your previous times and score.
It did give rise to Sonic speaking for the first time in a Western world game, and it also gave rise to Ryan Drummond, who is considered a favourite within the Sonic fan community. It also gave rise to such lines as,
"Hey, I'll play with you some other time."
I shuddered at that in '99. And I still do.
A few notables in this game is that Amy Rose makes her first appearance as a playable character along with Big the Cat, E102 Gamma, and the first appearance of Tikal the Echidna, an ancestor of Knuckles and companion of Chaos, a water being that could harness the power of the emeralds in destructive ways and was used as a tool by Robotnik. I'm sensing a theme.
The game saw Super Sonic playable in a way that fans found desirable, yet not amused that it could only be done in the last boss battle. Around the same time, ADV Films released Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. It was originally a 2-episode series in Japan, but ADV Films saw fit to consolidate the 2 episodes into one movie that runs for just under an hour.
The story has a very simple plot, with Sonic and Tails travelling to the Land of Darkness from the Land of the Sky on Planet Freedom, looking to stop Metal Robotnik. It featured elements from the games with the inclusion of Tails' biplane, the Badniks, and floating islands. The animation is a product of its time as a mid-90s anime with its dark palette and somewhat caricature art style. It's good, just not well polished. That said, the vocal cast are not without fault either. Nathan Burke was just a chore to try and listen to with Sonic, although fans get a kick out of this scene.
You might know everything I'm going to do, but that's not going to help you, since I know everything you're going to do. Strange, isn't it?
And what would happen years later for Tails in Sonic Heroes, here he sounds like a nasal 6-year young girl with a head cold.
It's a guilty pleasure at best. Nothing more. In the spring of '99, Sonic Underground debuted in the UK. The third DiC animation series of the Sega mascot started with a much different setup than that of previous incarnations. In this series, he is a prince to the throne of Mobius, and a part of the rock band and resistance group Sonic Underground with his two siblings, Princess Sonia and Prince Manic.
I'm not entirely sure that this was the right idea to go with this premise. I grant that it's good to try new ideas and shake things out of a rut. I just don't think that this was the right way to go, considering that Tails is nowhere to be seen, and although it retained the art style from Sonic Saturday Morning 6 years prior to this, then where was Sally Acorn, and why was there a statue of King Maximilian Acorn being knocked over when it should have been Queen Alina? Now, I will never mock the vocal capabilities of Jaleel White, of whom myself and many others consider to be the quintessential voice of the Hedgehog, but it was clearly noticeable at times in Wedding Bell Blues that he struggled to keep consistency in separating between his roles as all three Hedgehog siblings. But he improved with time. As Manic, the drummer who grew up on the streets as a thief, he was fine. Here was a character that would do the right thing eventually. Sonia, a pink hedgehog keyboard player who grew up in the ward of Lady Windermere. Don't ask. I found her to be annoying at times.
But as Sonic, flawless. If anything, I felt this was one of his best performances, as even though his voice had deepened a little from Saturday Morning, it still kept the tone from that series.
It also marks the first time that Knuckles appeared in a Western animated Sonic series, which included the Floating Island and the Chaos Emeralds being a MacGuffin for the series.
They had been used in a mini-series within The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog before, where Robotnik attempted to acquire the Chaos Emeralds by travelling through time and therefore be able to alter time and reality itself. This seems familiar.
Sonic Underground was supposed to end with all three siblings reuniting with their mother to overthrow Robotnik, who this time was voiced by Gary Chalk, who played Grounder in Adventures of and was also known for being the voice of Optimus Primal in Beast Wars.
But the series was cancelled after the 40th episode, and there were 65 episodes planned. Blessing in disguise? Well, that depends where you stand on it.